Welcome everyone once again to another week of What's the Status? This week I want to start it off with a quote from John Patrick Shanley, a playwright from here, New York City. And this is the direction that I want this episode to go in because once again, this is a podcast created and done by artists for artists. We want to spread knowledge. We want to spread awareness. And most importantly, uplift our community so that all of us could be triumphant and, move our lives forward. And with that said, John Patrick Shanley is quoted as saying, "Who am I? This is a courageous question. As a writer and as a man, I am involved in one central struggle, to discover and accept who I am. I believe all fear has its roots in denial. I have, at one time or another, denied everything, every fact of my specific self, my parents, my Bronx origin, my Americanness, my Irishness, my appetites, my mortality, my need for love and acceptance, my jealousy, my violence, my anger. I am not a courageous person by nature. I have simply discovered that at certain key moments in this life, you must find courage in yourself in order to move forward and live. It is like a muscle, and it must be exercised, first a little, and then more and more. All the really exciting things possible during the course of a lifetime require a little more courage than we currently have. A deep breath and a leap." That is one quote that I have lived by for so many years. And on that note, this week, our status up check is going to be fitness. Our status check is going to be fitness. And I have a special guest here that's going to bring some light, shed some light, and drop some knowledge for everyone that, we all want to look good. We all want to have a great body image, and we all want to have a nice Instagram avatar showing our nice six pack, whether you're a man or a woman, or just to look good, just to feel good inside your body. And I feel that there's a lot of misconception that's out there. There's a lot of people that have fallacies, a mistaken belief in regards to how fitness goes and how you should go about approaching to keeping yourself in fitness. So I have a special guest. This special guest is going to shed some awesome news. And guess why? Because not only is she a special guest on this episode, she is so cool, she's so bomb, and she is such an athlete. This special guest is a master Nike trainer, a yoga athlete, and a 3 times New York Roadrunners marathon finisher. She's also in the performing arts. She is a dancer who's performed with Jay-Z, to name a few. This up-and-coming artist named Beyonce and the Black Eyed Peas. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I bring you forward Traci Copeland. Dímelo, Traci. What's up, girl?
Hey, what's up, Pedro? Hey.
Yo, it is so good to have you, girl. I'm very, very happy to have you. And by the way, at the recording time of this podcast, it is a happy belated birthday to you, Traci Copeland. Yeah, 21 years old. Let's go.
Exactly. Celebrating that annual 21st birthday.
I love it. So, Traci, like I said, I'm very happy to have you be a part of this podcast, and specifically this episode in particular, because, we are still currently in a pandemic. And at the initial start of this pandemic, everybody treated fitness as like, if there's time or if I have energy, I'll jump on board and go to the gym or run. And now, I look out the window and everybody's a runner. Everybody's decided to run. Everybody's decided to do, some shape of fitness. So I'm glad that I have you on board. But before we jump in deep into the waters, like John Patrick Shanley said, I wanted to ask you first, how did you get incorporated with fitness and even granted the title of a master trainer?
Well, I think I got into fitness because I was always an athlete. I loved competing. I loved sport. I loved the power of sport. And I loved the way that I felt when I competed. And like anything, you try something when you're young, 5 or 6 years old. And I think I started with gymnastics and did that until I was about 18. And that led to track and field and soccer. And I think I was one of those kids that just didn't stop moving. I think my mom just put me in a sport because she didn't want to have to watch me all the time. So she's like, you know what? I'm just going to sign her up and just leave her here for a couple of hours and see what happens. But it ended up being just like just a way for me to be competitive, to just learn about adversity, learned about like my boundaries, but also just learn about what I was really passionate about. And I think after competing in college track and field and knowing that I'm not going to go on to compete at a professional level, I guess I just never wanted to stop training. And I enjoyed it so much that I would just work out on the side and I would go on, 2 or 3 mile runs, and then 3 or 4 turned into 5, and then 5 turned into 10. And then all of a sudden I realized I was running a marathon, or signing up for one. And I think I've always been the kid that struggled in gym class, like with the endurance, like running a mile. I was like last place, always, always. But give me like a strength and conditioning, type of test. I was all over that. And I think as I got older, I didn't like to be put into a category. So I think I just decided to say, hey, you know what? I suck at running. Let me try this marathon and see what I can do with it, and actually kind of prove to myself that I can be better than I thought I could. And I think it's just more just kind of figuring out what you're made of. And that's what the marathon brings out of you. So I think that's how I got into fitness again after sport. But, after, some marathon training, I also kind of got into dance, and dance was just like a fun hobby. And that led to working for a few years, and fitness was always there. But I've just always enjoyed, whether it's dancing, running, some type of strength training, or yoga. And I think, whether it's running or dancing, I met somebody in fitness who was a yoga instructor, and she invited me to come to take a few classes at her studio. Her name is Tara Stiles, and she got me really into vinyasa flow, and that kind of helped bring also something inside of me like, oh, I don't have to run a marathon. I don't have to run 10 miles. I don't have to dance for 2 hours. I can actually just meditate and listen to my body and strengthen my body. So I think there's like a lot of things that lead to fitness, but I think first and foremost, I think for me, it started with sport, and it started with the appreciation of sport. And then it led to appreciation of the arts, dance, and what that brought me. And then it was appreciation of being able to be one with your own body, like that mind-body connection. And I think that's what yoga brought me. And I think just having those different touch points, having yoga, having dance, having having competed in a few races, I think that is what has allowed me to really tap into sort of my love of fitness and just passion for, not just for feeling good about myself, but being able to share that with other people and encouraging other people to do the same.
I mean, look, what you just told me has a lot to do with determination, perseverance, and, you having an image of where you want to head, put yourself into, and where, the direction you want to head into. And, within the years that I've known you now, I've always seen you always be very disciplined. And, you're the person that, I remember running into at like 7 a.m. in the morning. I was taking my daughter Casey to a class, and then I see you and you're like, yeah, I just came back from running like 10 miles, and now I'm going to go train somebody, and then I got to go do, and I'm like, wow, you are someone that, I'm not going to say that you're a morning person, but you are really someone that's a go-getter. You get up and you make it happen. And, that's something that I've admired. So, with all that you have said, Nike is a globally like known company? What's it like working with a company of that magnitude and height as a master trainer?
Well, I think it's very exciting. I'm always have to sort of like pinch myself and just be like, wow, I get to do some really cool projects. And I think the great thing about Nike is that for me, it's always attached itself to where I started, which was sport. I've always been an athlete first. I've always had that sort of competitive mindset, and Nike brings out the athlete in all of us, whether you're a competitive athlete or you're just kind of doing it for fun. So I've been very lucky and fortunate to work on some really fun projects and travel the world. It wasn't, honestly, it wasn't something that was on my radar. Working for a brand like Nike, it just seemed like it was so far out of the scope of what possibility was. But honestly, I also think New York brings that out of the universe. And one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert, she's the writer of Eat, Pray, Love, and also this book I'm reading right now called Big Magic. She talks about leaving the door open in your house, kind of like metaphorically, obviously. She uses an example of a bluebird that just kind of flew in, and she just left the door open and she just admired this bluebird kind of fly throughout her house, a blue jay. And she left the door open so that the blue jay could actually come in, figure out where he needed to be, and then fly out. And I think that was her way of saying, like, you know what? We should be able to, we should leave our windows and doors open because you don't know what's going to come into your wheelhouse. And you have to kind of look at it for a second and honor it and then move with it. If you shut the door, then nothing's going to come in. So I think I've always just left myself pretty open to that type of possibility, like Nike, like running a marathon. And I think luckily working with Nike, I get the privilege to work with amazing athletes like Lori Hernandez, who's like one of my favorite gymnasts that I followed. She's from New Jersey. And then also Maria Sharapova, a couple of track and field athletes like Casper, who is running potentially running the 800 in the Olympics in South Africa. So I think, being an athlete, it's allowed me to see other athletes at the highest level. So I'm grateful for that exposure to that. I'm grateful to have experienced something like the Olympics 4 years ago in Rio. And, even this year, it's 2020. I feel like the one thing that the pandemic has like, I guess, we're missing out on because of the pandemic is because of the Olympics. And that's a huge loss, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely.
Whether you're an athlete or not, you appreciate the power and the beauty of people coming together from all different countries, all different walks of life, and competing and doing and competing at their highest level. But there's this level of respect also, and I think unfortunately the pandemic has taken that away from us. And I'm hoping and praying that next year, these athletes get to compete, because this is one of my favorite times of year where people get to compete and show the world what they've been doing for the past 4 years. There's a reason it only happens once every 4 years. So
Yeah. I enjoyed what you said about the blue jay keeping the door open and the blue jay flying in, and I'm like, well, what if a mosquito comes in? Like, what do you do with that?
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing. It's like you don't know what's going to come in, and a lot of it is it's like dancing and acting like anything. There's going to be a lot of things that you got to kind of sift through and be like, yeah, I didn't want this thing in my house. How do I get it out now?
Yeah.
But every once in a while, something amazing shows up, and if you don't appreciate it and value it, then you're going to lose it, and it's gonna fly away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's funny. I mentioned the mosquito, and obviously we all would appreciate. We all want the blue jay to come in. That is ultimately what we desire. But you during this pandemic, you've held multiple online, like either on YouTube or live, workout sessions and yoga sessions sponsored by either Nike or other people that you've had the opportunity to work with. But I want to bring this question in now because the popular time that people get very motivated,
Mhm.
ironically enough, is December 31st all the way through like maybe the second week of January. That's when gyms are flourishing. Your gym memberships skyrocket with that New Year resolution every year situation. But now during this pandemic, everybody has turned to fitness either online or on Instagram Live more than ever. So you being someone that is so very conscious of your health, your body, your mind, your soul, what has been your routine during this time to continue to staying as fit as you've been?
Mm. It's a great question because I've definitely had my moments. I mean, even though I'm a health nut and I love working out, doesn't mean that I don't have my days when I don't want to, or I just rather take a couple of days off. And I encourage people to do that too because you have to. You don't want to overtrain. You don't want to overstress your body. But I think it's it's tricky to find a routine that works for you. I think also I've relocated to a new city, so I think it's also tricky finding the routine in that. But I always try to run outside 3 or 4 days a week, and yeah, I always try to run outside at least 3 or 4 days a week, and do some yoga on my own, and I host a couple of Zoom classes, and honestly, like that's something that I wasn't really doing before pandemic. So this is like in a weird and exciting way during a dark time. It's opened up a new virtual world for me to connect with people that would not have happened otherwise. So women that I used to train in person and teach like a little fun beginner dance routine or do yoga with, we kind of kept that momentum and are now doing virtual classes. And I still see them, twice a week. And they live in New York and I'm on the other side of the country. So I feel connected and I feel like they're getting something, I'm giving something. So I think still having a connection to teaching and inspiring people to move, but also making sure that I am able to be curious in my own fitness. And curiosity can be a lot of different things. And I think, just because you are a runner doesn't mean that you are an amazing runner or a fast runner. I like running because it kind of unlocks something in me and it keeps me competitive and it keeps me motivated and dedicated. Dance
Yeah.
keeps me just curious. There's so much to learn and explore within dance. And I think staying connected to people like my friends like Carlos, who teaches house and footwork, I would still take a session with him just so I can feel like I'm still curious about my own growth. I'm not going to go
Right.
audition for Beyonce next week, but I always want to keep dancing in my wheelhouse, and I always want to be able to dance, and I always want to be able to run.
So
Um,
you're always staying active, and you're always, even if it's not for the purpose of trying to get work or anything
yeah,
on that side, you're just constantly staying active and also allowing yourself to have a few days in between of rest and letting your body recover.
exactly. And I think the moment that it switches to work, like this is work, that changes how you interact with it.
Yeah,
The moment that
yeah,
dance became work, it changed how I interacted with it. Now it's like, ooh, I have to book this job versus I can't enjoy this new routine anymore, or this new dance routine. Like I think it has to be, at least for me, I need to have the connection of just curiosity within fitness and within just everything. So I think I'm taking guitar lessons, and that unlocks something similar to dance because it keeps me curious and
Yeah.
be like leading an amplified life.
Yeah. And, I dare to say that a lot of people don't know this, but I think dance is like the ultimate like workout. And I don't mean like professionally. Me as a b-boy, I get a full body workout when I do anywhere between a 60 to a 90-minute practice, and it's not even that I'm, doing weights or anything. I'm just physically using my entire body in ways that not everybody can do. And that's something that I've always preached to people, that like, yo, I know you're not a professional dancer as you see me, but if you just get yourself in a studio and you just jam out, like the cardio that comes with that and all the muscles that you put to work doing such a thing, it just keeps you so active. And I guess, just burning the calories that people just would love to, burn. But what do I know? you know?
No, I think you do know. That's exactly it. I think because you're tapping into something that like it just happens to be that you're burning calories while you're doing this thing, and that you're getting a total body workout, kind of crawling on the floor and doing head spins and like cool freezes. Like that's a lot of like one, that's a lot of fun for you.
Oh, yes.
And then because you feel like, dang, I got this freeze, or I actually did this head spin, like but it's also the benefit of like, oh yeah, and now my core is on fire and I'm going to be sore for the next 2 or 3 days. And you feel like you actually worked. And that unlocks something inside of you. And I think now that for me, I'm in a space that was just created. Like my boyfriend, Eddie, he created this studio outside, and it took him all summer to make.
Yeah, let's go, Eddie.
Now it's done, and now like the hardwood floor is laid in. Floor has been laid in, and walls are white. We painted them, and now I'm like, I find myself just like freestyling and just working on things that like Carlos taught me or that Derek taught me from contemporary class. So I find myself just getting dirty on the floor like for hours. But I'm also like, man, I wish I spent more time with Pedro because then I could actually practice a head spin.
we'll see if we fit that in at some point, when you either come to New York or I go to Washington. But
I'm
but
so
Traci, I wanted to ask you before I jump into another topic, for people that just refuse because they're like, oh, I got two left legs, I'm not going to do it, or just don't want to be in a class where people are, the thing about fitness and dancing or yoga is that people think that the neighbors that are next to them are going to be judgmental and focusing on them. And little do they know they're focusing on their own life. But for
yeah.
people that just refuse to be involved in this form of fitness, would you recommend, the trend that's happening now, which is all the live sessions and or is personal training the way to go? Like, there are people that are going to refuse how you and I boogie. So, for those that refuse that, what would be the best alternative?
Well, I think right now having community is really important, especially if you're isolated. We're still we're not out of this darkness yet. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021. We could have another year like we've had this year. So I think we have to be prepared. And one thing that has helped me is just being connected to community, whether it's dancing with friends online like Joanna and Carlos, or getting like a small group of people together that I know that like I'm not necessarily charging for, but I'm like, hey, let's work out for 30 minutes and do this ab workout together. I thrive off of community workouts like that because I want to see people. And I would think that during this time, people want that kind of connection. But I think if
Right.
there's a certain skill that you want to master, if there's something that you want to learn, something that you're like so curious about, and like, you know what, I don't want people to see me. I just want it to be me and the instructor. Now it's time. Now is the time to kind of dive deeper into that curiosity. Because when this thing hopefully blows over, you're going to have that skill. And if anything good can come out of this, it would be learning how to do something better, or having some sort of creative outlet that you've honed and you never knew that you even would even like hone that skill. So I think it could be a combination based on your
Yeah.
capacity and like what your needs are.
Yeah, and of course you're referring to, Joanna Numata and Carlos Neto, who are teachers here in New York City, and of course, they've traveled and performed and continue to provide, a lot of training and even dance education as we speak. Now, shifting gears with you, Traci, I got this burning question that this is a question that, is borderline controversial, but at the same time, it is a question that needs to be addressed, and I want to get your opinion on it because I know a lot of people that, they want to lose weight. They hop on a treadmill for close to an hour and feel as if they've done their due diligence. And then soon after, in their mind, they believe and are convinced that you can eat whatever you want as long as you work out. What's your opinion on diet alongside with fitness, and what are your thoughts on an example that I just gave you with people that perceive this kind of belief?
Yeah, I mean, I think
That is the I love the entry to that answer.
yeah, no, that's not going to work. If you think that getting on a treadmill or getting on a bike for an hour, 45 minutes, and just doing a bunch of steady state, we call it steady state cardio, and then just going for the bag of Doritos after, or a gallon of ice cream, uh, that's not gonna be good to your body. And I think what tends to happen naturally is you once you start to feel good working out, especially if you're somebody who hasn't worked out in a while, and you're in this groove of like, you know what, it's not even about like losing weight, it's about like about how I feel. Once you start feeling better, then you're not going to want to put things in your body that are going to make you feel bad. I think those are like, it makes you feel good in the moment. But like long term, and I think I was one of those people, like, I didn't know what was the best thing to eat growing up. We didn't really have the nutrition experts that we have now. Like I was before track meets in college at Georgetown, we were driving to like Hardee's and Arby's and eating fast food the day before.
Hey.
Yeah, that's a huge no-no now. That would never happen. And even as a gymnast, I was like eating Cheetos and Lunchables and like high sodium and ramen noodles. And that's one thing if like, you're trying to save money and, top ramen, hey, there's always like four for $1. And it's good if you're like fighting a bad cold. But yeah, I think, nutrition, I would say is the biggest thing. And if you can start to like invest in ways that are going to change your diet, and it could be just little by little, not just right away. I think that's the mistake that people make. They just try to go from one extreme to another, and then they can't stick to it because it's so extreme. But maybe it's just little by little, you're cutting down on your portions, or little by little, you're cutting down on your meat intake and just adding more veggies. Because I think I've never liked the word like I'm on a diet. I think diet is just what we do every day. What is your diet? That's like what am I gonna eat long term? Not what am I gonna have short term so I can lose this weight. Now it needs to be
Yeah.
so you can have your fitness and your nutrition going hand in hand. And if you're training for something, then you're going to need those extra calories. So just making sure that they're coming from the right place. So have a good pasta carb load before a marathon or before a 10K, because you're going to need those calories. You're going to need the carbs to burn. But Do you need that stuff every day? Definitely not.
Exactly. And the reason why I labeled this a controversial question, because, we're living in the times now. This is the era of how dare you take away my Cheetos? How dare you take away this from me? I would never, and I just feel like there's a lot of propaganda that's being pushed out there. Actually, it's being lobbied out there to make, people, what they see is much stronger than what they hear. So if you put it out there for people, people are going to start believing it, as opposed to listening and getting it from someone that has the experience. So that's why I wanted to touch up on this, because you and I are a living example of what discipline can look like. If you have discipline and you really have a goal, you can do your thing. And of course you can have cheat days. Of course you can have a day that you just want to have a bag of, Cheetos and Arby's or whatever, Sonic or whatever. But when it's like a everyday thing, then now you're treading some waters that you're going to tell yourself, well, why am I still not losing weight? Why is my weight bouncing up and down? And that's just something that I hope that people take away from this, because I know a lot of friends that think that they're good at health and fitness and body training and whatnot. And I see them eating all types of crap that I'm like, and I'm not trying to push like, right now, everything is aiming towards plant-based. It's become like the most popular quote diet.
Yeah.
And I just feel like people are jumping into things without doing the proper due diligence of research and getting to know that no matter what you jump into, you must put in research and study and know what you're getting yourself into, and practice it correctly before, like, just
Yeah. No.
thinking you're doing the right thing. And ultimately, a lot of people are harming themselves.
Yeah. I think it's if you can't just go in for a season. You got to be there for the full year.
Exactly.
You got to
And
go long term. Yeah.
Tracy, I've kept you for a while, and I have one final question that I, want to ask you, because like I've said throughout this whole podcast, you are one of the most fit persons that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. So body image is at an all-time high in popularity, especially in the age now of social media. I remember growing up that if I saw someone showing their stomach, it was like very provocative. It's like, oh my gosh, she had a shirt that, like, you saw her whole stomach. Now you see everything on social media. Like, it's no longer like, oh my god, it's like, oh yeah, there goes homegirl showing her this and that, or there's this guy showing that. So in the age now of social media, and someone who may be listening right now that feels that they're overweight and have a very negative, they're very negative about their body image, what would you say to them to encourage them, even though I keep trying to push that whatever is on social media is all just, a lot of it is not 100% true, but there are people that believe it to be entirely true.
Mm. Yeah. I think. I mean, I would tell anybody who's looking at social media for any body image, I guess, goals is, well, one, it's not real. None of it is really real. Um, I think, especially if a lot of people you see in fitness who have millions of followers, and um, like, you don't know what they do on a daily basis. You don't know what their water intake is. There's also like there's a performance element of fitness, where it's like you have to be completely chiseled or have perfect abs, female or male. I think we got to be able to embrace the imperfections. I think for social media, when you see somebody post, they're posting for a lot of reasons. They might be posting for like a sponsorship thing. They might be even tweaking their body a little bit. Like every ad, even outside of social media, every magazine, every ad that you see on display, as someone who's been in those ads, I know that they have been tweaked, because I know that when I didn't look that way when I went in. So I think people who see those images, they got to realize that they've been very heavily edited. But you got to appreciate your body in its raw format. And I think if you want to post something of yourself, hey, if that makes you feel better about yourself, by all means. But I think it's more important to sort of embrace where you are right now, and I think that's wherever you're supposed to be. Where
Yeah.
you have 4-pack, 6-pack, 8-pack, and I
Or
think
two. Let's not discriminate on the two
or
packers.
two, yeah, and I think you got to be able to show you got to be happy with what you have. So
Yeah.
like the Lizzos of the world, they're empowering this new generation of people who are not new generation, but a generation of women who are body positive. And I think we should be able to appreciate that as much as everything else. And I think hopefully that opens up a world um, of body dysmorphia where it's just that sort of goes away. So you have just a lot of different body images versus one type that we can all look to, because that's just boring.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with that, I'll add this quote from Confucius. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. So thank you for shedding some light on that, Traco. I've kept you long enough, but with here on What's the Status podcast, I give a moment for every guest that comes on board. This is now, your moment to, if how can people reach you if they have a question and they want to, or communicate and get in touch with you, and what are you working on now, and basically any final thought and message you want to leave, whatever of those three that I mentioned to you, or one of those, whatever you want. This is now your floor. You get to tell the world and all the listeners, anything that Traci Copeland is thinking of. So take it away.
Thanks, Pedro. Well, thanks so much for having me. And it's been a great conversation. I think if people want to, continue to talk about fitness or sport or how they can continue to stay active and just curious, they can always reach me at my Instagram handle, Traco4. I'm also on Twitter. Don't really check that one as much, but Yoga Athlete. And then I'm going to be updating my website in October. So I'll have that kind of up and running, hopefully early to mid-October. But I think what I would just leave people with would just be, especially during this darkness, and I think we're all feeling the weight of it in one capacity or another, whether it's pandemic related or politically related, or you're just having your own personal battles because of this whole pandemic and having to quarantine, and it's changed your lifestyle. It's definitely changed mine. But I think what we can do, and again, this goes back to the one of my favorite authors. I've been trying to do a lot more reading lately, and I read something that she said the other day, and there's a reason that we have these practices that we have, like yoga and meditation and dance, things that we have when we put into a bucket of routine. We've been having these practices throughout our whole life, and they're not practices for no reason. They're practices because you use them for something. So we've done yoga, but what are you doing yoga for? You've danced, but what are you dancing, or who are you dancing for? There's a certain thing that you do that is a part of your practice and routine that makes you feel whole, and that's how you battle the world. And I think if we can take those practices and amplify that during this season of uncertainty, I think we're going to be okay. And I would just say, just hone in on your practices. What makes you whole? What makes you human? What edges out the darkness in your life? Amplify those practices, because now it's time to actually use them. It's only going to get a little bit darker. So let's use those practices, and then let's also continue to stay curious in the world, curious about the thing that kind of keeps you going. And now's the time to tap into that curiosity so you can amplify your life and appreciate the value of your own joy.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. I'm very inspired by everything that you just said, Traci. Thank you once again for coming on board on What's the Status podcast. And, hopefully everybody takes away a very important, something important that, they apply to themselves from this podcast. And, I'm so grateful to have had you on board. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Traci Copeland. Thank you all so much for tuning in on another week of What's the Status podcast, and we'll see you soon. For more on What's the Status and to stay up to date, make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and YouTube at What's the Status Podcast. Also, feel free to reach out via email at What's the Status Podcast at gmail.com.